So about 3 years ago, I was in a startup venture looking for that product to build, talking to a lot of customers, and realized in many cases the more homework I do, the more interviews I have, the more confused I was. I constantly debate with the data that's from my left hand to my right hand. I constantly debate with myself about the signals the customers are telling me, right? Which way is it, whether it makes sense or not. And this is where I thought, going through all of these brainstorming, it would be really good to share these failures with others, with my fellow product managers about what's not working. So that was the trigger for me to decide that I'm going to design a class. And as I was thinking about putting these, lesson learned or failures together, I was in the Bay Area at the time, and Stanford CSP, standing for Continuing Study Program, has an excellent approach where they say, if you want to teach a class, come forward, go to our website and submit a proposal. If you can imagine the number of the proposals they receive, right? But that's a super rewarding experience. You really have to understand your audience. Just like here, we're talking a little bit about, what do you hope to get out of it, so that we can align, right? We can start gaining some understanding about what will possibly trigger the delight for you, and therefore lead to a most lovable experience as quickly as possible. So with these kind of initial interests, I started working on the class. And obviously, what is one thing as product managers we do the most when we're testing out these different ideas? What do?
Run experiments.
I got the word, yeah. We do a lot of experiment. So I said, I have to test this somewhere. And this is where I wrote to Carlos. I wrote to Carlos because I had been a participant of these Wednesday talks where I personally benefited, right, from learning from others, from participating in this community and help to build the community together. So I said, Carlos, I need to test out this class idea. Can I come to talk? He's like, yep, Wednesdays. Which one do you want to pick? This is exactly how we started. So again, I want to put in a thank you for Product School for providing this community building effort. I think it's super helpful for us to be able to get together, exchange ideas. Know that the reason I'm highlighting what we're about to go through are not victory or successes. They're meant to be, each one of these 5 are where I tripped pretty hard. And I also collected tons of lessons learned by going to my other colleagues and mentors, right? So they don't mean to be a slam dunk at all, but it's just a beginning for all of us to brainstorm how to get to a possible most lovable product experience. Very quickly about myself, I was born and raised in Inner Mongolia, northern part of China. I'm currently a director of product at Amazon. I've had quite a bit of fun building products. I do have an engineering background, but the product side is super intriguing. I'm still doing engineering, by the way, but I believe that product mindset is actually needed everywhere. In fact, I'm pushing really hard to let all team members, engineers included, having that particular mindset. Couple of other things that's been interesting for me from a learning perspective. I've for the last couple of years, decided to do startup pitch judge for a group called Defy Ventures. Defy is a very unique organization. Some of our groups help new startups. Some of our, like Y Combinator, some of the group help a particular minority group. Defy helps those who were previously serving time in prison. And the reason they focus so much about helping them to put together their startup pitches is because for these folks, the chance of finding another job is super, super slim, right? It's just difficult for them to earn that trust and be able to find the next job when they come out. Therefore, the best thing for them to do is to start their own business, right? I find this immensely rewarding by helping that group. In fact, very recently, I received a couple of product newsletters from these EITs. That stands for Entrepreneurs in Training that I have trained. So I felt really good. I was like, yeah, you see in this newsletter, I can see a few things that we talked about are getting reflected there. So that's super cool. I also volunteer for the Palo Alto Lean In Circle. So many of you probably read about Cheryl's Lean In book, right? An awesome one that I believe strongly not just applicable for women. It's really for many of us in our mindset for tackling something new, right? Getting to a new line of business or just, find new ways to challenge ourselves. And obviously teaching. So this is how I started, and this is why I love to be able to build this community together. So I thought I would try 3 takeaways, and I felt we're relatively aligned just from the earlier quick survey and poll of the room, right? We will talk about what makes a product lovable. I do feel it's really important for us to discuss, do our products have to be perfect on day one in order for it to be lovable? I want you to think about that, right? I see a few nodding or shading here, so let's think about that. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is what mechanism can be used to ensure that entire organization, back to your point about convincing the company, is focusing on this MLP. And that's really where the 5 steps I hope to go through, containing some of the both success and lesson learned I've had. So what is MVP, everyone? Minimal, viable. It is a product. How many of you have been using MVP regularly in your product language, in your day-to-day? I see quite a few hand raised here, at least half, right? And MVP is probably one of the most popular word out there in the product world, at least for the last few years. And it is for very valid reasons, right? MVP accommodated, helped us in getting over a lot of the challenges. Where do you guys feel the concept of MVP helpful and beneficial?
Quick experiment.
Quick experiment, thank you. Scoping? Did I hear the word scoping?
Yeah.
Okay, helps with the scope, right? You quickly get a sense about what's working, what's not. If you can live without it, maybe then get it out of it, right? Exactly. So that helps with the delivery too. Iteration, I love that. MVP is about iteration. You have to pick up the cadence, and you can go smaller, but you got to go faster, because otherwise you've gone smaller for overall of a less number of output here, right? So don't get me wrong, MVP has its value. It's absolutely valuable in many, many ways. However, as we, in general, as a community, carrying the concept of MVP for the last 5 or so years, something starts to emerge, right? A trend, a pattern. That is, companies are often rushing to get the product out. Team members will tell each other, it's okay because we're only shipping MVP this round anyway. And you will also see people start, whenever they see some a moment of triaging customer defect, and they will say, no, this is not part of the MVP. We agreed upon this, right? I see a few nodding heads there. But that has really created a problem. MVP means we settled for mediocre. MVP means we are more focusing on what we can deliver versus what's really needed out there. MVP means we're now offering customers a set of functions, but not quite there, a set of capability that's similar to company A, B, and C, but customers can no longer truly recognize what's unique about our product and about our offering. We became one of the many. Does that relate to your experience? So from that perspective, MVP is really okay when you needed to do testing, when you needed to test your risk, especially test your most risky areas. But it is not okay if you just want to settle right there. So for that reason, it's important for me to clarify, I do not want you to completely abandon the MVP concept, but I would not start building your team building your dream, starting your first venture with the concept of MVP. It's like once you start yourself low, it's hard to bring it up again. You got to pull yourself completely up to say, I am actually aiming not to be minimized. I am actually not only looking at barely being viable, and I want to look for something that truly delights so that the customer actually loves this product. Now, there are definitely examples out there, right? When you see version and version of the product that was barely staying at the MVP level, right? We've had, Zendesk was not the very first help desk system we've ever had. We've had plenty of them. Salesforce certainly is not the very first CRM software serving either enterprise or small medium companies. We know plenty about the electric cars that has been undergoing experiment and even some of the road trials, right, for years. But there's one thing coming out that made a difference. Tesla made a difference. iPad is now becoming the new standard, right? Zendesk is being regarded to in a totally different perspective. There was something different there that has pulled them completely out of that MVP. Now, with that in mind, we also have to talk about a very important part. Does that mean those products are just genuinely better? People spend more time polishing them. They have less bugs, and therefore they were able to get out of the MVP state? Does that mean we each have to work on our product with 10 times of extra effort and delay the release until it's perfect so that it can be one of the most lovable product? I see a few handshaking, but I also know most of you guys were quiet because it's pretty tough, right? When you bring out a version 1 product that's maybe buggy, maybe doesn't have quite the polished usage there, it's a little bit hard to have people fall in love with that product. So how do you deal with that? For those of folks who were thinking maybe not necessary to have a perfect product on day one, what are some of your thoughts to capture your users' love there? I think in one of my previous companies, we had Raleigh workflow management system. And what I really liked there, again, that's being used by a lot of the developers, is they would come up with a banner to say, we're rolling out the beta version. Would you like to test this beta version of the UI, right? So you, again, felt respected because you were given the option to say yes or no. And from there, there's also a rollback. I don't like a rollback, right? And then there's in-place feedback. What do you like about it, what you don't? You don't have to look for somewhere or go to their website to enter a ticket. You literally can put in it right there, and it helps you to capture where you were, right? So it's those kind of listening mechanism, ability to continue to improve upon. Awesome. So that's really a key thing. No product can be perfect day one. But if you want to wait until your product is near perfection to start nurture MLP, that's too late. So I'm really happy to hear in the room we have a few brave minds to say, we're going to go focus on one thing. We're going to go deeper. We're going to make sure we grab their attention, and we will make sure we have a way to continuously improve, because that's precisely what the MLP is about, right? Be bold about it. Start on day one. Don't wait up. So then we have to now get in and talk a little bit about how, all right? And for the how, I have a framework of 5 steps here. Now, the 5 steps are overgeneralizing a lot of the challenges or a lot of the experience we've had. But these 5, each of them are being carefully picked here because I felt these were areas where I learned the most for myself, right? The things where some of them may seem obvious, but especially difficult in making happen. Some of them may seem completely irrelevant, but in the end became absolutely crucial for the overall product success. So the first one we're going here is about love the problem, not the solution. And many of you are familiar with this one. Let me confess, this is one of those that is pretty visible in almost every product-related textbooks coaching there, but I have found most difficult to do. It's just simply hard, right? So take a guess, what is this number here? 98%. 98% of startups fail. How many of us would have the light bulb moment to say, guess what? I have this perfect thing. I know that thing, once I made it, can sell. People is going to need it. We're defining a solution. We have a big fascination for ourselves about our ability to create the best solution under the sun. Just naturally we go there, right? So how do we know if we're aiming for the right problem? There are many ways to test the market. There's many ways for you to survey your user and your customers. But there's also one way that's relatively effective. That is, are you willing to pay for it? Have you had cases where you've got wonderful stuff, but you'll like it, you'll give it all kinds of positive feedback, you'll even rate it high for the NPS, for the Net Promoter Score, but when you get to the point about are you willing to pay for it, you would hesitate, and you may feel it's okay for your life to continue without it? This is the case. It has to be inseparable. You cannot spare it from your life if that is a most lovable product. There are good products, there's good solutions, but are they good enough? And this is the elevation from good to lovable. Right? So this is a good one. Now you have to be super critical with yourself as far as getting this question, because most of your early adopters are friends and families. They support you, they love you, and for that reason they say this is good. So one time I was brainstorming with a mentor of mine, a very experienced, seasoned entrepreneur who's been, doing this for about 12 years, right? And in his office, he had a stack of white paper, pencils right next to them. And what he was telling me here, Jin, is at the time we were using a concept called lean canvas. So it's a one-page idea talking about what is the problem you're solving, what is the solution, and what are some of the details for go-to-market, right? So his point to me was, Jin, you would flip through, you would draw an idea, put it on the one-pager, modify it, go to the next one, go talk to the user, move on to the third one. The way I look at the progress is actually going to be how quickly you flip through these pages. And you're expected to go through many versions of these in a very fast fashion. Otherwise, you're not iterating fast enough. I think early on we talked about MVP, go faster, right? This is exactly that illustration. Super, super important. I also like this next piece, right? Brian here put this together called Is It Love? So he has this blog talking about a lot of very cool things related to product. But there are a few things that makes me smile, right? They talk about customers visibly smile when you describe this product to them. They also talk about you dream of using it and all the features you could add there. It's like in your dream. You can't get away from it. I also like the one where it says only your CTO or the top architects think it's ever possible, right? Most of people says that just cannot be done. Cannot be so simple, cannot be so easy. Things have been complex and difficult for a reason, right? That kind of thing we've heard. And of course, for those of you who work in the enterprise world, I know you will get a giggle for the very last one. The top industry analysts are not writing about it. Right? So think about it. That's really key for you to confirm, right? Am I onto the right thing? And if this is not the right problem, if I'm becoming too obsessed with the solution, what do? Flip that page, move on to the next one. You have to flip a lot of pages. If you say, I am so smart that I've started with this idea, I keep adding more to this page, I have not yet completely trashed it by flipping to the next one, something is very suspicious. Be self-critical with yourself here. Next, continue with the obsession for ourselves. We go all the way from loving the solution to love ourselves, right? We often say we know who are the real users. Think about the product you're working on earlier today, whatever that product is. Raise your hand if you believe you have a crystal clear idea about who your users are. I know I'm one of them. But I will tell you, we may not be right. We may not be right. I was in one of, earlier this morning, we have a product management training going on in my company. So therefore, one question raised in the room was about, how many customers should we talk to? Should we only satisfy a subset of customers or all customers? I immediately thought about tonight, we're going to come to this point to say, define your users, define your customer segment, and then from that segment, who is your early adopters? Right? These can be very, very different. However, if you're not super clear about you're onto the real problem, that's matching with the real set of users who care about that problem, who truly suffer from these pain points and therefore desperately need a better solution, you're not onto the path for a most lovable product. Because these two things, left and right, are really the cornerstone and foundation. It has to be a real pain point, but that real pain point cannot be generalized. It has to be for a specific set of customers and users. So how do we discover the real users? What has worked for folks here in the room? I think there are many ways to discover the real users, but the most important thing is to be mindful that it's not always so obvious, and therefore be willing to spend time for it. I will tell you that one time I sent a team member to go shadow or observe a customer of ours in the data center. He was sent there for one reason. We thought we had an opportunity to develop some sort of analytical solution for this customer. He came back completely shocked to say, I actually see a bigger need. I saw how many times they were manually dragging some of these stuff. Therefore, if we go work on something related to the workflow management there, that's immediate pain relief. So you see the day and night, right? We ended up completely sort of switching our focus in discovering the problems. And that has happened to many of my friends in the startup world. One day we're talking about this. Next month, coffee meeting, we're onto something completely different. This, again, is about flipping those pages, right? It is about finding the problem, finding the user, yet finding that was not painful enough. That was not strong enough. There was not enough desire to pay for it, not enough desire to pay for it at a very high premium, and therefore it's time to move on, right? So it's definitely an iterative process, which I believe get us to step 3. Love the iterations, not the repetitions. What is the difference here? This reminds me, this gentleman over here talking about engineering process. Keep in mind, I'm from an engineering background. So if we recall the most recent, let's say, 2 or 3 sprints we've done, how many of them recall we were just simply saying, well, a new sprint has started. What are the next 3 features we can throw in, right? Did we really think about the value score that matters to the customer? Or was that convenient enough where it happens to be at the top of our triage board, so they just come up? Or was that something we triaged about 11 months ago? Has situation changed, right? If these relates to your day-to-day, you will understand why I purposely picked this when I only had 5 opportunities, 5 lessons to share, right? This has both helped me and also hurt me along my journey of building products, because iterative is so important. However, iteration is totally different from repetition. Many companies feel like they're doing iterative process when they're simply repeating, and that is not value add. So you have to really figure out which one is which. Number 4, love the why, not the how. This is a key differentiator about why most lovable product versus minimum viable product. You notice that I'm intentional even in choosing the word for am there. I want this to be maximum. I did not want this to be minimized. And for that, you have to have a deeper meaning. We have to figure it out to get it deeper. Now, many of you are familiar with this TED Talk. Raise your hand if you have already watched this one. Cool. You're familiar. In fact, let me tell a story. So I'm a big fan of Simon. And can you guys, this is a TED Talk he did quite a few years back. And this, I believe, is still today ranked number 1, the most watched TED Talk. But do you guys know where he gave this TEDx talk?
Here,
Puget Sound, right here. Yeah, in fact, he now lives in New York, right? But he actually delivered it right here. So I thought it was wonderful that I get to play, 10 seconds of that right here just for the amusement. Let me see if I can make it play. That's interesting.
So where do you start when you have a...
Perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple, but we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. They'll make MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products. And nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what?
So he's saying people don't buy what you view. People buy the why. So definitely, if you have not watched it, go back and check it out. If you have already watched it, if this reminds you, go back and go through this again. But the why here is really what elevated that initial design. If you think about when Steve Jobs did the initial announcement, he did not come up to say, I have a new phone for you. He did not, right? He talked about the value proposition, the 3 things coming together. He keep having this thrill in the audience about what would that be? What would that be? Yeah, how could these 3 totally irrelevant things can become one thing? That's kind of not only his presentation technique, which is being very well regarded, deeply analyzed up to the second, right? You guys will find Nancy Dorte's analysis for his for Steve Jobs' press release delivery up to a very precise level. But more importantly, that was also their belief. They structured the company mission, the mission for this product exercise to say, I am going to forget about minimal. If they initially started to aim for minimal, none of these would have happened. And if you think about it, if their focus was to barely make it viable, no way that's going to happen either. Now keep in mind, for some of these Apple products up front, they were not perfect or bug-free day one. But did they offer something unique that captured your mind and got your attention and therefore give you a deeper meaning? Right? That's kind of what really happened. So really focus on why. Now, I have to tell you guys another guy that I'm a big fan of. Do you know who he is? This is Dieter Hammes, right? He is the chief designer of Braun. He also did many other things. I recommend you to Google a talk he gave associated with San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. So his design are now part of the art, the museum collection, and for that reason he did an interview talking about some of his philosophies, right? Very, very cool. And he is known for his 10 good design principles. I decided to single out 2 of them to help emphasize, strengthen my, my argument and debate point here. Number 2 says, makes a product useful. Remember we talked about back in number 1 and 2, but who defines useful? The problem that matters to me may not matter to you. The kind of solution works for him may not work for her. Therefore, it has to come in a pair, right? The definition of useful actually already captured what kind of problem you're tackling for which kind of user. They have to go in pairs. And then, of course, the very number 10, the very last one is super profound. Less but better. Who does not want that? Right? Less but better. But again, think about your day-to-day for your day job, right? If you're in a product making world, how many times you guys have had the conversation to say, what additional feature we can put in? What new feature do we do for next version? Right? Do you ever had the conversation about what feature can we yank out this time? Are we having too many APIs by the fact that there are 10 of them going on and each of them deliver a little bit of a different result? Is that making it easier or harder for the customers? If that's making it easier for an existing customer who keep asking for more feature, what does that have to do? What does that mean for a new user who come in and all of a sudden saw these 10 or so options?
But you can't always please everyone. So you have
You
to
cannot.
balance. That's the whole art of our job, is to find the right balance.
Which is why on the far right, you have to define who is your user. Now, I disagree with the word balance. Balance takes me away from the mission and the goal of looking for MLP. It gets me away from driving for most lovable product. If I say my product is aimed to please this section, you, then it's you. I am not balancing. I am leaned in for this section. Make sense?
Yeah.
Got very strong. You do not have to be the best product for everyone under the sun. But if you got to do really well for this group, then that's it, right? Many, many years ago, a friend of mine who's in architecture, she'll say, Jin, you have no clue why I love a Mac. And she's talking about a Macintosh, right? Because she used it for design. I could not comprehend because I do not do the kind of work she does. And I felt Photoshop running on my PC or laptop at the time was more than sufficient for me, right? It's things that she used that I don't, therefore I don't appreciate the value. But that was such a committed piece that, at the time she's paying $6,000 for her desktop, right? That's 6 times more than mine. So that was the debate we had back then. So totally cool, and definitely look him up. But again, this is all about focusing on why, and focusing on why has been very genuine in our product making history. So it's not a new concept that's hard to make happen. You just need to make a habit of really debate with yourself and pull yourself out of the path to MVP, right? Don't minimize it, but that's hard. Last one, build with love. And that means invest in your developers. This may be the most surprising step for you because so far everything seems to be outbound customer focused. And who can argue a product manager's intent to be customer focused? But I bear to differ here to say the most important thing for building a most lovable product is actually be inbound focused on the developers, the colleagues who are building this product around you. So the more love you have there, the more caring and transfer of that passion you've gained about what pain, for whom, then they can better reflect it, right?
Because
if I may share a story, I was recently meeting up with a friend and also a previous student who took this class with me. And he said, I want to share a story. I said, okay, tell me what's going on. He said, well, since the class, I've made progress with this idea. I think I found the real problem. I was able to get some initial funding raised, and I got a few developers to build this version 1 for us. It was super buggy. We went in for the demo, and that first demo was a disaster. I was losing it. And then he said, I thought about your number 5. This was becoming our quotes now. I thought about your number 5. I said, okay, I'm going to go out and chill. I really wanted to scream and shout because it was so embarrassing. We lost the opportunity with the VC because the demo was so embarrassing. But he said, I thought about your number 5. So I said I would go out and chill and come back, and I talked to the guys and I said, okay, listen, let's see what we can do. How much can we fix? When can we go back? Is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks? So he's saying this particular lesson helped him to put into practice and internalize a critical moment for his young company, right? And if you think about it, it's hard. It can be really fragile. Everybody are stressed, overworked. You not only are short on time, energy, lack of sleep, you're probably lack of funding, right? In many, many ways. So this one really makes a lot of sense. But there's also a favorite quote of mine that I decided to put in after I looked into many, many cases of our products. It's the fact that if you do not have the mind and share and the love of the developers, you do not have any control over the unknown unknowns. These come back to the risk mitigation. As a product manager, you do not know what kind of challenge you're going to run into. And how do you best mitigate for things that you don't know? You transfer the mission, you transfer the love, so that there's more than you taking care of this. Maybe you're the one taking care of the risk related to customer, but your developer there is helping you to take care of the risk of scalability. Your other designer over there is helping you to take care of the potential risk of accessibility, right? So that somewhere down the road, a committed user customer group can be taken care of because somebody has already thought about those. And these are easier said than done because that's an infinite list there. We don't know how many we're going to run through. And therefore, it's best to have more eyes on the, on the game plan to help you take care of it, right? So that's really why it's super important to have this number 5 here. I again make a point. While everything else tends to be customer focused, and that is so true, product manager is equally important as far as nurturing the sense of mission, the sense of goal internally. You should be as much as a cheerleader for your colleagues as you would be the one representing your customers and advocating for their pain reliever. I'm kind of going through this quickly because I've just shrank down a whole quarter of a Stanford CSP class into the last hour or so, and I was a little bit worried about running out of time. But let's do a quick check-in. We said we would aim to solve at least 3 questions here tonight together. And by helping each other, you see how wonderful we've been, right? Leveraging our participation, leveraging our positive energy in the room for each other as a community. We did talk about what makes a product lovable. You now have some sense on what that should feel like, seems like, right? It helps you to define it. And we also talked about whether it's okay for your product still to be lovable but not necessarily perfect. And then from there, we went into the 5 steps. We first talked about you have to focus on what? Quiz time. You have to focus on the problem, the pain point, right? I heard it from the back. Secondly, you have to focus on what? Now that you think you have a hypothesis for the pain point. Pain point for user, right? Who? And then from there, you start to do, number 3, iteration, but not repetition. And throughout this whole process, you wanted something deep. Every movement of yours, every action was about how to make it less but better, deeper. Therefore, you focus on why. And as you do this, these 4 things all being important from a customer perspective, you can only make that happen by focusing on number 5, that is developers, your internal colleagues. Feel like you got that framework now? I'm sure there's number 6, 7, 10, 20. We will co-develop that together along the way. But if these 5 has helped you with any thoughts and any sorts of ideas to go home to either try it tomorrow at work, or help to advocate that in your company to build the most lovable one rather than what your boss wanted you to build, I think we've accomplished a little bit right here. So thank you so much for your time. I want to wrap up by saying I want to encourage everybody here, myself included, to aim for our most lovable product. We know MVP is wonderful for feedback, for risk mitigation, but we also know most lovable product is way better, way compelling, because that's something, although require a lot of courage from us, super difficult for us to make happen. But the problem here, or the exciting thing is, once it happens, once you grab a most lovable product, one-to-one attached with your user, focusing on their pain point, that feeling and that experience can no longer be minimized. It's forever yours.